For joining us tonight for the City of Morgantown Traffic Commission here on June the 4th, 2025. And we are in City Council chambers, and we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order at 6:37. So we'll start with roll call and introductions. Rachel, would you like to go first, please?
Going around. I'm Bill Kowacki. I'm Second Ward Councilor, representative on this commission.
I'm Sharon Patrick, Vice Chair and Sixth Ward Representative.
I'm Drew Gatlin, Staff Engineer for the City of Morgantown.
Matthew Cross, Pedestrian Safety Board.
Chip Walmsley, Bicycle Board.
Charlie Byer, Third Board, Swallow.
And I should also ask, would someone mind taking notes? So we can, oh, thank you, sir. All right, so we have that. I will note there's no one sitting in the public chambers here for public comment. So I will ask for approval of the April 5th, 2025 meeting minutes.
So moved.
I second that.
All right, thank you. And then May is in the works, and we'll work on those for the next meeting then.
Once we second a motion, we'll open it up for...
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, yes. Yes, any discussion on the April meeting minutes?
Meeting minutes. So just to note, the typo got carried through yet again April 5th. This meeting was actually on April 2nd. So
thank you.
That was on our May agenda, that same typo. So not April 5th, but April 2nd. So I'll make sure that that's updated on at least... Yeah, it looks like the agenda, or the minutes are fine, but the agenda item is incorrect.
Okay, I was like, it says April 2nd on mine, but the minutes are correct.
Yeah. First time we've kind of transcribed or summarized commissioner comments in a while, so we'll keep trying to do that. I'm sure that you all don't want me to do it verbatim, but please do let me know if you feel this is an accurate representation of what you're trying to get across. Any other comments?
Okay. All right. So, okay, I see, sorry about that. All right, so we were going to talk about the summary of neighborhood meeting reports, but I do believe that comes from Caitlin.
Correct.
And it looks like she is not available for our meeting this evening, so we'll follow up with her. Any other discussion about that? Okay. All right, so our next item of business is the Traffic Commission project discussions. And so, as you all know, we have been kind of drilling down on the strategic plan for the city related to the traffic items, and we went through and kind of prioritized those, and we've identified some what we think are really good projects that the commission can work on. And so I think then we will further discuss that this evening. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, indeed. I'm going to bring up, so for commissioners that, like Commissioner Cross, that have notes from the previous meetings and printouts, you'll notice the matrix that Chair Williams put together. And I'm going to be pulling it up here right now. The finalized matrix in terms of, say, priority A, B, and C projects. For priority A, of course, the first was limit truck traffic through the city, or at least limit through truck traffic in the city, as well as emphasize the creation of human-centered complete streets to improve multimodal transportation options. Priority B would be identify gateway corridors and district branding opportunities through the development of a citywide wayfinding signage study, as well as support emerging transportation technologies, such as electric vehicles. And then priority C was utilize the PRT as a placemaking asset and unique transportation resource in the city. So, Chair Cross and Vice Chair Patrick and I were talking about how to continue identifying the types of projects the commission might be interested in pursuing. We have talked for a couple months about the truck study, and so that is now in a subcommittee that hasn't yet met and hasn't quite done significant work, but we will, of course, come back to the commission once that subcommittee has something to report. And then we discussed last month something that the city administration would like to bring to you all, and is also now in a committee, which is the curb regulations and street parking. The minutes from last month, which are not yet available, they will detail kind of that discussion for your benefit. But beyond those two, we are interested in knowing y'all's relative interest in these other projects as identified, both from the subject matter and then your willingness to work, or what type of work you would be willing to do on this project. Is it you would be willing to serve in a committee, perhaps, and do research and develop recommendations for the commission to consider sending up to council, perhaps? Or on perhaps the other side, would you only be willing to devote time in these regularly scheduled meetings and only be willing to review essentially final votable recommendations and materials? Still would like to just kind of get an idea of the level of commitment from each one of you on any of these given projects. And of course, the answer could be zero. I'm not interested in any of these projects on any level, or I'm interested in all these projects and I'm willing to put in hours outside of this meeting every month or something, right? No judgment, but we thought that a reasonable way to approach this would be to survey you so that you don't have to, on the spot, think about that right now. And we could distribute a survey sometime between now and the next meeting, essentially, that would try to capture your feelings and thoughts about these projects, and perhaps allow you to suggest more if you would like. And then we could review at the next meeting kind of the findings of that survey. And it'd be a limited survey, it's just us, right? And then hopefully that would help to narrow down the type of work that this commission wants to essentially go for, so to speak. So, open to comments on that. And we could talk about the survey itself. We could talk about any of these projects. If you would like some more information or background, given that the minutes aren't quite out from some of these meetings. If anybody, Charlie, haven't seen you in a while, if you're hoping to get some information about where these projects came from. Yeah, so these were all identified in the strategic plan for the city of Morgantown. So these are not coming out of thin air. These projects are essentially a distillation of transportation-related strategies that the community identified as its priorities for the most recent strategic plan. And Chair Williams brought to our attention essentially these transportation-related items in the strategic plan and said, hey, do we want to focus on these? Do we want to help the city to further its strategic goals. And generally, the people that were in the meeting said, yeah, it sounds like a good idea. We massaged a few, we combined a couple, tried to maybe get less in the technical weeds and more in the policy realm of some of these projects. I do want you all to remember kind of that you are an advisory body that is advising a policy-making group, which is the city council, right? And so I do believe personally that your strength lies there, not in attempting to do technical analysis, of, say, any given street improvement, right? But like, how should the city approach street improvements? Or, what are the community's priorities for how money should be spent or how process should be made? So, thoughts, questions, concerns? Anybody like me to repeat the?
Couple things. I thought of going over this list right here. I wonder, coming up on the summer, we finally got a cooperative response with the DOH to possibly close High Street for some events this summer. I wonder to highlight some of the multimodal transportation options that we're moving into our high priority category. Would we want to consider a pop-up project maybe on High Street if we can shut down vehicular traffic? Do you think that would help to highlight some of the bike and walking multimodal transportation options? And that'd be over the summer. It wouldn't include the students, but would that be helpful? It's just an idea I have for everybody. What do you think, Drew? We talked about some pop-up projects on Spruce Street, when we were doing the PED study. Didn't seem, and then COVID hit, so it all fell about. But would we want to reapproach some of the pop-up projects to highlight that?
Can you elaborate a little bit more by what you mean? Like, do you mean like a try, like kind of a try this, like bicycling in this area, or is that what you mean by a pop-up?
No, it's where they sort of re-coordinate some of the travel lanes and so forth and shut down some traffic. Like on Spruce Street, they were talking about shutting down the inside lane and creating a bike lane for a day.
Okay.
To let people walk and bike in that one lane. I know DOH is not too thrilled about it, because they want to keep the cars moving. But
So
things
it's kind
like
of like
that.
a what could this look like?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And Drew might offer some options on some other places around town where that could happen, but that's the gist of it. Drew, anything to add?
For sure. So thanks for bringing that up, Mr. Cross. The prospect of shutting down High Street, it happens regularly from block to block, right, for different events mostly in the city. The entirety of High Street is rarely shut down, except for in the case of parades, but it has been done, right, for hours at a time. And so certainly the idea of using that as an opportunity to, right, explore different transportation options sounds logical to me. High Street specifically has a template to easily modify lanes and show through the use of, say, like cones or dividers, like a different layout. Actually pretty difficult because of all of the bump outs. So it was kind of an all or nothing thing, and shutting down roads that are in business districts end to end is also not something that I think has really been proposed for anything except for High Street. So in terms of its impact to demonstrate the possibility in general for interventions, right, it would be demonstrating the possibility of it in and of itself and not really applicable to anything else, right? But say shutting down a lane on Spruce Street to do a bidirectional bike ped lane, right, that would be more applicable potentially for everybody to imagine. This commission has talked a lot about demonstration and pop-up projects in every single neighborhood, and that being a tool to be explored for community engagement. If that is something that excites you in general, right, these pop-up projects where you are trying to temporarily change a traffic pattern or a geometry of some type of intersection, right, to slow traffic down or to provide some different type of facility, like a bike lane, a temporary bike lane, or something like this, or temporary speed humps or stuff, right?
How does this information get communicated to the public? Should we decide, like, this might be a really good time for us to implement some, more bikes or something. How does that information, if you don't subscribe to the paper, maybe, I don't know, what other communication avenues are there to get this out to the public?
So you're asking how would we advertise a demonstration or pop-up project in general?
Yes. Is that something that's been done in the past? Because if this is
So-
pre-COVID time, that was before my time of joining, and so I'm unsure of that.
Yeah, so the most high-profile pop-up project the city ever did was on Grand Street and Ross Street, and it deployed several hundred traffic cones, and we put together flyers and I personally went door to door and knocked on about 200 people's doors.
Wow, okay.
Probably can't do that much again. That was a different time in my career here. But certainly, we do have notification tools. It really depends on if you all decide that this is a type of project and a process that is most interesting to you and that you want to devote time to this, we would figure this all out. Kind of, how do you think we should, get the word out?
Sure.
Would it be mostly just social media, right? Or would it be radio and television and...
Like signs in the neighborhood, et
Yeah,
cetera.
yeah, I think signs. Do we have the dates of these closures on High Street?
It was just something we talked about, particularly for a long time. It was more centered on the outdoor dining at the time.
Yeah, okay.
Bringing the chairs and streets out into the street and
Yeah.
possibly having an event for kids, some karate displays or hula hoops, stuff like that. Sort of like the Kids' Day with the
Yeah.
total closure of downtown. That's generally where the idea came from.
Okay.
And I thought it might coincide with some street stuff, but generally Spruce Street, as Drew mentioned, was a primary example when we were talking about the PED plan back in 2019.
Matt, when I was on the Health and Wellness Commission, like during COVID, right before COVID, we talked about, there's an organization called Try This in West Virginia, and they have some events where they do...
Sorry, what's that called?
It's called Try This.
Try This?
Yeah, and they have events, now that I think they give away like grants and stuff, but they had events where like you could go to the area and they would have like bicycles to try and kayaks to try, and it was kind of like a bring it to your neighborhood, get kids to like, who have never played with soccer to like play soccer in their neighborhood. They have a lot of really like cool things that they were doing, but when I was on the Health and Wellness Commission, we talked about doing something like that. It might be something we could, and maybe we're kind of merging two different things, but could partner with the Health and Wellness Commission. I don't know the commissioners now, but we were excited then COVID hit, and that kind of like put a halt on the gatherings, and I think it lost steam, but they used to be very interested in doing that type of event. So if we were to shut down, and this sounds like we're not completely shutting down a road, but, adding bicycle lanes, et cetera, it might be an event that the Health and Wellness Commission would get interested in, particularly if we're doing something like, bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure to encourage folks to like utilize those types of transportation.
Was there a particular city that they tried some of this, try this stuff in?
Yeah, so there's, all over West Virginia, they've done it, but there's a really great organization in Wheeling, West Virginia. And remind me and I'll Google it and send it to you in an email, but they have a box truck that they have gathered equipment over years, and they drive it into neighborhoods in Wheeling and just kind of like set up shop. And so they have like hula hoops and bubbles and a bunch of stuff, and they particularly target neighborhoods that don't have parks and don't have like recreation and are underprivileged neighborhoods. So we don't have to like go that far to do that, but I'm definitely not telling the Traffic Commission we should get a box truck full of stuff. But the Health and Wellness Commission might be interested in partnering with us and promoting something that is like, bicycle and walking infrastructure.
I think you have like hit the nail on the head. I think the way that we're going to get our projects like over the finish line a lot and is to collaborate with other organizations or other commissions. So I think that's a really good idea too.
And we could obviously like flesh that out as a subcommittee before we we work on that and figure out what we want to do. And invite them in to collaborate with that, but just a thought that was already like kind of spinning somewhere.
Certainly have to put the focus on how that's going to recalibrate transportation, on any particular street or section.
Yeah, and we definitely don't have to do bubbles and hula hoops, but could get folks who have not utilized bicycle lanes or, that are used to just riding the bike at the rail trail to learn bicycle safety, et cetera, with other people that are there and not on your own. I know I bicycle in the city and it's terrifying, especially like a first-time bicycler, so.
So, in general, the type of event that you all seem to be referencing is, in other parts of the country, is referred to as an open streets style event, right? Pittsburgh is the closest large example of these, and they tend to have them at least 2 or 3 times per summer, where they will shut down about 5 to 6 miles of contiguous road throughout the city. And it is everything from hula hoops and bubbles to yoga in the street to arts and pop-up plazas. And the events from a transportation perspective, right, are, I think it's kind of the implication that the street could be anything else other than just a vehicular corridor, right? And that experience in and of itself could be suggestive enough, that you don't have to have a explicit focus, right, on look at what we're doing, shutting down the street, right? All of the times that we shut down High Street otherwise, right, for parades or for the half-pipe snow, I forget what that's called, and Hops on the Mon and other various events, right? The focus is almost never explicitly about the fact that we're shutting down one of the main streets in town, right? And so, if we can broaden the scope a little bit, and maybe provide some example, right, infrastructure, maybe a little bit of explicit messaging, but getting lots of partners. Devoting city staff time, significant amounts of city staff time, if you are requesting that this happen. right? So unless you are willing to put time in directly and get working with your neighbors and perhaps other organizations, maybe the city staff would step up and do it, but it might, just know that it would be dependent on people other than yourselves. So.
On specifics for transportation, I know Drew, with his previous work with the bike board, was proposing a contra bike lane on Prospect. Is that still in the works?
Yes. So that pedestrian safety and bicycling and multimodal improvements to the Prospect Street corridor are designed, and they are not exactly funded. We are considering pursuing those in this year's paving project as we reconstruct North High Street. A large portion of those improvements centered around the North High Street dogleg intersection of Prospect Street. Right? And so, yeah, fortunately we have a design on the shelf, and we have a significant portion of it that's going to be constructed this year during the paving project.
Great. Will it be implemented, yes, bike lane? You think? Maybe not this year, but possibly next?
I have heard no one say that we should not pursue that design project.
Good, okay. So that is something to highlight, the multimodal options, at least on Prospect, which would generalize student activity, which I have no problem with. I mean, students are active in town. I always try to, weigh the general citizenry attention towards the attention of the 20,000 young adults that are here in town, and try to get a balance, but I have no problem with directing energy towards that section of town. Do you bike much along that area towards main campus?
No, I live in the first ward, so I usually am around the downtown area on this side.
Right.
So no, I'm not.
So you're more about the Dorsey to Downtown project?
Yes. But also, a lot of my neighbors are really excited about it too. I know that there's some people who are loud who are not excited about it, but, yeah.
So, Mr. Cross, you brought up the Prospect Street improvements that have been designed as a project to highlight, or in context of the pop-up projects?
I just wondered if it was going through, since you verified that there is a possibility it will. I just wondered if, see, that's the question I had for the commission as well, since that's more of a student-generated thing in the summer, which brings me to another alternative question. Do we want to include some WV representation in this, since they are wide users of our transportation system? Again, do we focus on...
Can you clarify, you said in this being...
General downtown campus, well, even Evansdale as well, which we don't really get out to as well. You've been doing Oakland Street, so there again...
So this being the pop-up projects, or this being...
Yeah, the pop-up project, would it be as effective in the summer without the general student population? Mm-hmm. That was...
Yeah, again, I think you're, if this is something that you want to pursue,
correct.
These are things that you could figure out as you're developing the project, for sure.
At this point, yeah, I'm open to any other suggestions about when we were talking about the high priority categories.
I know I mentioned that some of my neighbors had mentioned the speedometer that we talked about this 2 meetings ago. I think that might be like an easy project that I'm happy to take that on and lead that. But Drew, you said that they're not really utilized very often.
I am still trying to get the communication and schedule together.
Okay.
With the police department and public works on how those are deployed, So certainly if you wanted to help provide a prioritization mechanism, you know, about where it should be deployed, right? And which streets, and, you know, if you wanted to tie that to basically first come, first serve, whoever requests it, or some other mechanism, you know, we would certainly consider it.
Were you also considering looking at the data from that? Is that also a part of the project?
I think this was just a, like, general deterrent, that we would move them into different neighborhoods
Sure,
to,
okay.
like, deter.
Gotcha.
Folks, I mean, it worked on Dorsey. And I don't know that I don't know if we get that data. It would be just generally cool to see. But I don't know how we would really use that data, particularly because we're not doing the technicals. I think that would be Drew's department that would use that data more than us.
Yeah.
Surely we could advise that, hey, there's a lot of speeding here. Maybe this is something that your department wants to look at here. And if we get that data, cool, I'm happy to sift through that. But I think it was just a general, it might help our neighborhoods be a little safer.
Absolutely.
Particularly, right now is a high traffic through the First Ward with White Park and all the ball games that are happening up there, and then Jack Roberts Park all day, every day, just because it's a beautiful park. But I would be interested in knowing, I don't know everybody else's neighborhood the same way that I know my neighborhood, but figuring out a schedule that, I know right now is, you know, Grand Central Station in the First Ward, but that might also be, you know, similar to around Krebs Park, and other, like, high-trafficked summer areas, and also just high-trafficked areas that might be able to utilize that. So would be interested in figuring out a prioritization and getting those moved around. And maybe they don't work and they're a gigantic pain for Public Works, et cetera, and we could evaluate later, but I think that's like an easy,
I agree.
a lower, just an easier thing that the Traffic Commission could kind of utilize our resources on.
Sure. So we would say that, like, you know, the prioritization of the speed indicators, is that as its own project then, you think?
I think that's a good one.
Okay.
I'd like to see it not rest in a garage, but rather.
Absolutely, absolutely,
One
okay.
location to the next. And I think within each ward, you could identify the problematic routes and just an occasional reminder to what usually is the worst offenders, the people who live there.
I know.
Just that they need to slow up.
Yeah, and I think to that point, Bill, is that Sharon had brought this up earlier, but we're missing some, Bill represents the second ward, so we get some of that information from Bill, but we're missing 2, 3 commissioners on our, so like, I mean, we're not getting anything from the fourth ward or seventh ward from commissioners.
Yes, the one thing that you should do as a commission and as you speak to council is remind council that it is a council appointment to this commission. So they should be looking for someone that will serve. I assume that Joe probably went after you, right?
Joe did, yeah.
Do you know, Bill, do we email them, or do we have to come in person to request that? Or what's the best practice to get that
Well, you can do it
portrayed
in
to
any
them?
numbers of ways. You can't email them and come from your chair.
Okay,
You could come to their meeting and stand at that podium and tell them.
okay, oh, maybe.
You could ask Drew to carry the information on to administration and council. I think the best thing to do is for chair to get in touch with one way or the other at the podium or through the email.
So Sharon, I think that could be also another priority that we could try to fill our council and make it a full body.
Absolutely.
I'm listening to what you say. I'm a long-time advocate of the idea of the boards and commissions that we've had as a way, and I've had this told to me by numbers of city managers who have come to Morgantown and have said that they've never dealt with so many boards and commissions. And each one of these boards and commissions has its inspiration come from something, activity in the city that needed to be addressed. And those commissions, those boards were the solution at the time. What's happened to us over a period of time is that we've never really gone back in and disassembled those. In other words, took a good look at the reason why these were put in place. And given those circumstances, those reasons, are they still appropriate to the needs of the city? The city, I can tell you just in the time that I've been on council, has changed significantly in terms of its administration, its capabilities. We have people on staff now that were never available to us before. Their talents, their expertise are really very worthwhile. Also, our communication techniques have changed. Our attitudes in the community have changed, demonstrated by what happened to us with COVID, demonstrated by the way we conduct meetings, whether it's in person now as it used to be all the time, or via Zoom, or some other similar mechanism. I think it's important to dwell on the mission of these particular organizations and what they do. Are they still relevant? Are they still contributing? I know that when the Traffic Commission was here, put in place, and I'm correctly not actually accurate in this, please, but I believe it was there because communities felt as though they didn't have the input into the city to tell them what was happening in their neighborhood. In other words, they didn't have a way of complaining and having it addressed. The city's put in a lot of things over a period of time. The 311 is an existence that was never there before. We have a way of reporting and communicating. The meetings have always been open, and that podium has always been a forum for anybody who's had any kind of complaint, or just simply like the idea of expressing their opinions on any subject whatsoever, which is appropriate. The question I have for you is, when you said and I'm sorry I'm rambling on, but it's probably my last meeting, so you only have to put up with me now. Unless I become second word's representative.
We're looking for one.
I'd have to be nominated by the person who's going to be sitting in this chair. I'm not sure that would happen. In any case, the pop-ups, they're wonderful instruments, but they demonstrate, it's a way of demonstrating to the community and advocating for a particular thing. I think like closing down High Street really wouldn't give you much of an anything that you would be able to advocate and promote. I mean, one single lane traveling for 3 blocks is not really transportation change.
Agreed.
The things that you mentioned with the demonstrations that are done in Pittsburgh, for example, through the transportation, I forget the title now, but those generally demonstrate to communities the advantage of particularly closing down a street or changing a route in some manner that would make a difference. And certainly, we could and should do that. That should come, I think, from the community. It can come one way or the other. through complaints to the administration, and the administration just simply say, okay, and we'll demonstrate this by doing that. And we have currently in place, the ability to address that in our engineering department. I hope that will continue. I don't know. That's, administration's not going to
So, yeah, to take it further, then, I would ask the ward representatives then to, if you're in your wards, maybe think of a possible transportation change within your ward neighborhood that could highlight some of the, something relative to improving the multimodal transportation options. Certainly a street that's under city control, like, High Street, Spruce Street, as we know, most of it's DOH control, so it'd be difficult anyway. But anything within a neighborhood street, as Drew mentioned with the, some of the previous projects, like up on Maple Drive and so forth with street closures, that did highlight it for a while. And then with the COVID thing, it kind of lost impact, I think. And there was a lot of resistance to it from some of the neighborhoods, as well as support.
Well, we've done demonstrations like that before, and to Drew's credit, he was an advocate and probably the catalyst to have some of these things done. The partial street closures, the limitations of traffic on the street in order to make the street more usable. And then the cones placed at various locations demonstrating the kinds of traffic controls that could be applied to a neighborhood should the neighborhood accept this. Again, Drew made a very accurate statement earlier in this meeting. He said, you are advisory. You're not the expertise. You don't bring to this commission any kind of skills that would say that would improve a traffic flow. We have consultants that do that for us. There is currently a downtown study that has been committed to computers now that can demonstrate various things going on, that if you do this, you'll get that. What happens is if you do this here, what happens to that intersection here. There are some things that you just need to advocate for. I'd suggest that if you haven't looked at the MPO study, for example, that you go back and examine it and be an advocate for those kinds of things. It was accepted by the MPO. It is currently something they want to do. You may want to push for it to be done in a more timely manner, or advocate your voice to see that if it couldn't be done in a more advantageous manner. One of the things they talked about was the idea of the synchronization of the downtown lights, for example, and the idea of the delay in crosswalks. That would be more than appropriate for what you're doing. I just think you need to, and it's not like I've not been paying attention to this commission. I've been through numbers of commissioners that I've had. Paul Steele was there for the longest time, for example. I've heard from Suncrest and Marty Dombrowski and the person who sat in this chair, Jay Redmond, for the longest time, sat and labored over the idea of what your mission was. It's always been a struggle for this. My question is, you still seem looking for a reason to be here. The question is, I think you need to address what can you do, what should you do, what is your mission? At one time, the only mission you had, or your main mission, was simply to communicate neighborhood desires to the administration. That has been heard and is being addressed, but in a different manner.
Agreed, well said. It was a time when we had, multiple people in the meeting, particularly with Jackson Street. We were talking about closing that down years ago. Had a big turnout for that. Up at the top of South Hills, where Buchanan is. Big turnout for that, and some other as well, but I doubt we're going to get people in this chamber anymore regarding issues. So, as Bill said, where do we focus at this point?
Well, like to bring us back, I'm noting the time here, I have 20 after 7, and I think we've been trying to wrap up around 8, and I do want to thank Mr. Kolecki for the comments, and of course reminding that this is his last meeting, so thank you very much for attending and being a really vital part to the commission, so thank you. So we'll go back and just kind of summarize what we're going to do. I think we've added...
See, could I
Yes,
have
sir.
one more thing?
Yes,
Sharon?
of course.
I was going to mention, since Bill mentioned the MPO, I was going to say, if you may have seen in the paper, the Kimley Horn study recommendations for the micro simulation downtown changes, they're going to open that up to public meetings now. So regarding some of the improvements for multimodal transportation, they're all about it. So if we were to jump into this, we might want to wait until those public meetings come about and get some input, offer some input in that respect.
Do you know when those are scheduled?
I don't think they've scheduled public meetings yet, have they, Drew?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, all right, well, that's something to keep on our radar.
It was already accepted and finalized by the policy board.
Yes,
So
they've said
Steve,
that.
it's not been implemented in terms of being a project that they're taking on. It's been accepted from the contractor itself, Kimberly Horn. And everybody's enthusiastic with the results, but it needs to go and get public.
Yeah, I think they were going to make more of a communication effort to get that out to the public, to let them know the
When you
specifics.
start doing the monumental changes, the easy ones, the downtown traffic and the lighting and what have you, it's all right. When you get into Groombine Island, you're starting to open up a different can of worms.
Okay, so it sounds like, as Drew mentioned, we'll send out a survey. I think what we should do perhaps is just kind of recap the projects within the survey so everyone understands maybe the time commitment, is that correct? And, and I think one part of the survey I think we've talked about was, really what the time commitment of the commission. Do folks have the time to dedicate a lot of hours outside of this meeting time? If we don't, where can we evaluate that and kind of do maybe a smaller piece of the project? So we'll go ahead and send out the evaluation, and I believe we should be adding the prioritization of the speed indicators, and then also adding members to the commission then as well. And we'll work with Brennan on the evaluation and how we'll disseminate that to everyone. So then hopefully by July, we can take a deeper dive into what the results were of that. Was there any other discussion about projects?
One thing I will mention, in the meeting, there was a representative from WVU that said they were looking at opening up the PRT to more citizen usage within Morgantown.
Fantastic.
I don't know if that indicated any alternative routes, but maybe as we talked about opening it up through the summer and trying to attract more of public usage for that system. So I thought that was interesting to hear, since that, although that's on our low priority category, but still there.
Did you, we did remove high, medium, low, and just try to do A, B, and C, just to be a little less.
Oh, okay. That's what they are?
Judgmental on the,
Yeah.
but,
And we can send that out, because I believe that might even be part of the May minutes, I'm not sure, but we can update, because there had been some modifications to this, so we weren't showing preference or priority to any particular bucket here. Okay, so I will go ahead and, I think we had great discussion about a lot of projects, a lot of, I think, enthusiasm about getting some things documented and then showing the progression that the commission has been, or will be making. Let me see here, it's just the old one, sorry, it's my old agenda here. All right, so I think, should we close that section of the agenda, or is there further discussion? I just don't want to miss out on the commissioner comments either, because...
yeah, we've got a little bit of time left, so
Okay,
again, just
yeah.
for y'all's benefit, right, we've already talked about limiting through truck traffic in the city, and that has been essentially assigned to a committee already, and that committee is coming up with a general recommendation for the study outline, right? And we're going to be trying to present you all some things at some point in the future. We have curb regulations, street parking regulations, and then the complete streets policy of the city, updating that and using that as a mechanism to improve multimodal transportation options. And then focusing on gateway corridors and branding opportunities through wayfinding signage, another option. And then emerging transportation technologies like electric vehicles or others, and then the PRT as a placemaking tool. Yes, so any other comments on that or the survey instrument itself? Would you all like to be asked about anything in particular that we haven't mentioned already? You know, again, time commitment, willingness, interest in these projects. Do you want us to ask you your thoughts on the purpose of the Traffic Commission itself? Or anything else? What your favorite color is? If you want.
How much you should be paid?
Yeah, sure. I mean, things that you think would make the Traffic Commission better or make it easier for you. Certainly regular minutes and agendas probably on that list.
I think that would be a really great idea. I think evaluations are really important, and I think that perhaps, I mean, we can't go back in time, but that would have been nice to do for folks that maybe are no longer and kind of getting their input on maybe, you know, was it too much of a time commitment and everything. So I think, you know, as Drew mentioned, any input that we could get from everyone would be very beneficial to the, again, moving things forward so we're completing tasks that we want to, you know, and projects that we want to complete.
Just an aside, I think council is asking for reports from various commissions, boards,
Yes.
and that may be an opportunity for you to make the report and also suggest to council that they need to fill the board.
Correct. Which I was going to say, I was going to touch upon that when you mentioned about, you know, all the commissions and things within the city, and are they still relevant? And I think we have is it an impact report or an annual report, which is the first time, I've been with the Traffic Commission, I think 4 years. 4 years now, and since the first time I was ever even heard about this, so it was pretty, I think really impactful to show what we're doing, and then I'm wondering if from that, if city council should review those, and do we need to maybe start, I don't want to say removing, but maybe sunsetting some of our commissions, and then therefore, we have people that we know like to volunteer, maybe they could reallocate themselves to other commissions. I don't know if that's the intention of the annual report, but certainly could be a takeaway from that, potentially, since we do have so many commissions and committees.
When is the annual report? I'm just curious, like, Bill, it sounds like this commission might not be as relevant as it was in years before. Like, before I say, like, let's devote time to planning these events out, knowing that the commission could possibly be, like, decommissioned, do we know if that is a thing? Like, are they looking at the Traffic Commission as not being relevant anymore, and we shouldn't? Because we're kind of prioritizing and getting ready to, like, do stuff. It sounds like if that is not the case, and we might be decommissioned, like, I personally don't want to devote a bunch of time for us to turn around in the new fiscal year coming up and then say, like, hey, county, like, the city, like, council decided no more.
Yeah, I don't know, Drew, I don't have it. I don't think that that is the case. However, I don't know if they put an intention, or if you know, Mr. Quickie, more about that.
Would suggest to you that it's a matter of whether you as a commission think you're relative, not whether or not council does. I mean, you were put in place because the community wanted you in place. It wasn't council, and that was council's way of responding. So when you do your report, suggest that you really feel as though you contributed. And then I don't think councils can argue with it.
Yeah, I appreciate the, the concern and the question. This commission did almost vote itself out of existence a couple of years ago, when Dave Harshbarger was part of the commission. And there was definitely a question on the wall of, should we continue to meet, or is this just unnecessary bureaucracy? And I think at the time, right, the commission was structured in a way that it was a little bit of unnecessary bureaucracy, right? It served as a body where either administration or council might delay, a citizen's major complaints, right? Go to the traffic commission, maybe they'll meet, and maybe you can talk there, and then if they recommend that this should go back to city council or administration, then we'll consider it, right? And we've really, as Councilor Kalecki has highlighted, we've worked to remove those, what appear to be at least unnecessary hurdles, right, for people to have their requests directly heard. We have the direct reporting apps, and people are now feeling a little bit more free to go directly to council with requests and directly to administration with requests. So this is where we've been trying to encourage more of a policy focus, right, for this board rather than the specific requests on transportation stuff. But yeah, Rachel, I think if you all would like to continue to meet and you see a purpose for yourselves and an interest to deal with any of these projects at all, then I think they're all likely defensible and useful for the city at large and city council specifically, for sure.
I agree. I think that we've made a lot of progress with regard to projects and identifying things. We're not just coming here and like, oh, okay, this or that, and we have identified projects and outcomes and regular meetings. I think that that alone shows our significance.
Yeah, I don't think there's an intention to disband boards and commissions that are actively meeting. Yeah. Gnats.
Yes, sorry.
There are several boards and commissions that have not met for years, though, and so maybe it would make sense to disband or get rid of those. Chip, I'm looking at you.
Hey, so to add some historic value to this, so the traffic commission was the first kind of newer commission that was added, and the pedestrian commission came after us. The idea being, I think Don Spencer was the champion of both of these, to get more input to the city to improve pedestrian facilities and bicycle facilities. So when the bicycle board was implemented, there was really no budget, no bicycle plan. We looked to see, so basically all the members of the commission, of the board, we researched what other cities were doing. And the Federal Highway Commission gave money to, I think, 10 different cities, municipalities, a substantial amount, $2 million to implement bicycle infrastructure and bicycle things in their areas. And so, and I'm in the bicycle business, so I know, I've been doing this for 55 years, so I know lots of people in the bike business, and it's a small industry, so everyone knows everyone else. And so, we convey a lot of information back and forth, so we literally wrote grants to get money for the city to do things. So we were not just sitting around, but there was no city engineer in place that did things, so, we kind of ruined our mole and stuck him into the system here. So kind of made us redundant, and we were even told by Damien, before Drew was working there, that we were writing too many grants, and then the DOH didn't like this because we were writing grants, and they didn't want to, and then Fuad wanted to micromanage everything, and he's scared of bicycles because he's never ridden a bicycle, and everyone's going to die if they ride a bicycle. So, but we, produced a big document. We became a League of American Bicycling Award for a bronze, and we almost made silver the next time we reapplied. And those applications gave us ideas of things that we could improve. But we're in a very, very difficult place. We're not in a large metropolitan area with huge tax base. We're not in a place that's very flat. We're not in a place with really, really wide streets. So we did a lot with what we had, and we got those awards based on the quality of bicycle plan we put together. We then presented to City Council adopted it, but then they didn't do anything. So then we said, okay, we're going to pick 10 projects that cost no money. And we still didn't get anything done. So then when we started getting city engineering on board, we started getting a lot more things done. We researched, we came up with, what things we could do in Morgantown. So like we have climbing lanes, those are bicycle lanes that are climbing going up a hill. But once you go down a hill, we have shared lane marking because you can go down a hill as fast as a car can. And so we figured out how to mix different types of markings to achieve what we wanted to do. And we're still working on putting out markings as Drew does paving projects. He's continuing, we have a network that goes all across the entire city. So this isn't apparent to a lot of you people that don't ride bicycles a lot. We had a bicycle education program to teach people how to ride anywhere, anytime, fearlessly.
Do we still do that, or is that?
Because we had money to do it, and we run through the money, and yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So it was a totally different thing, but things have changed. So we can't come up with anything new. We can get new members, but then what do they want to do? And people these days want to be able to do something within a year. If they didn't do anything within a year, they didn't realize that the wheels of bureaucracy and everything travel very slowly, and getting money, it's like, I wrote a $500,000 grant to make a multi-use lane across 705, and finally the money was taken by the DOH and reappropriated for something else.
yes, the bike board had a lot of different successes over the years, right? But it took a lot of effort.
And a lot of effort. So, we're talking about after hours time, we had multiple committees meeting a couple nights a week, every month. And we had our regular meeting.
I put in over 100 hours on the most recent bicycle-friendly community application as a volunteer for the city, right?
Yeah, there's like a half dozen of us that did it. So
Yeah.
it's a lot of work, but we had projects that we were passionate about, that we could do something about. Again, we were kind of flying under the radar.
Well, right, and you all started different programs which grew outside of the auspice and control of the city administration, right? So a lot of the bicycle, advocacy these days is in childhood education, which is properly covered by several different organizations here in town that have nothing to do with the city, and volunteer-based organizations, right, that actually have money and are able to spend money directly. These seem to be much more interesting to people to participate in, right, than a just kind of nuts and bolts government kind of advisory board. So certainly, I think you bring that up to just point out that boards and commissions can wax and wane over time.
And right now, so
it's a
of
natural
course I've got a
flow.
vested interest, but I'm on the Metropolitan Planning Organization. Basically, the document that the bicycle board drafted is being used by the MPO as the foundation for their bicycle plan. Now that, we've got Drew and Damien is on board too. The person before Damien was not quite as, she wanted to keep everything within the status quo. But yeah, we have a lot more cooperation from the city, and they understand. But they didn't have to go out and try to figure everything out like we did. So, we served a purpose because we figured out, and the whole country was figuring out how to do different types of markings. And we're looking to see when different cities did things. And matter of fact, we tried to do an end around because the state wouldn't let us do something because it wasn't in the MUTCD. And then it appeared in the MUTC, that's a manual of uniform traffic control devices. then it appeared in the MUTCD, and then someone from the state said, but the next MUTCD is probably going to deny that, so we're not even going to try this. So we said, okay, so why don't we do a trial? So we decided to do a trial and put shared lane markings down as an experiment, not saying that we were going against, the state's wishes. But, it was a lot of work on our part, but it was a little bit simpler because, we were drawing upon everyone in the country's experiences and then bringing that back to Morgantown. So, but now Morgantown, I think, is up to speed with things. It's a little bit more, it's really easy to go on the internet and try to find more things about bicycle control and how to manage bicycle safety and safe lanes and stuff like that. So, but I'm still here because I want to make sure that we don't fall through the cracks. And,
Does the board meet anymore?
No, because we don't have anything really to do. We
Is there a board
generate a
structure?
document.
Is there a board structure?
What?
Is there a board structure?
There is a board structure, yes.
But essentially, your board is just.
There's probably a half dozen people I can call up and we can have a meeting. But it's, at this point, everything we could do is being done by the city, so.
No, your board is very successful. You did. You created the route. It's appropriate through this community. You caused things to happen with the signage, the proper signage, which occurs to me that perhaps one of the things that might be put on the agenda is to review to see whether or not that signage is still adequate or worn out or needs to be replaced or should be.
There are probably things that do need to be replaced, and some of the markings on those shared lane markings will probably need to be refreshed by the time Drew has gotten all of the rest of the streets done and marked and whatever, so.
I think it's a very healthy thing for an organization to have achieved a series of goals and then decided to, essentially close up shop and monitor things from afar, right?
That was one of the things too, is in monitoring. So when we created the bicycle plan, we were supposed to, get reports back from the city, and of course, crickets, so.
Right, yeah, this is 2012-ish. But, so, we have projects, we're going to survey you all.
Yes.
We'd asked if you wanted us to ask you questions about, different things, other comments on projects or survey of yourselves.
Some of the things you're doing with the rapid response this summer are going to highlight multimodal transportation, which is great. The North Street project, will that be finished by the time the students get back with the sidewalk?
Probably, actually. I think it's starting, that and First Street relocation are both restarting quite soon. And maybe the Prospect North High Street improvements will be finished. It's just dependent on WVU's timeline with the steam tunnel improvements there near Borman Hall. So,
I noticed that the sidewalk's not completely finished going down to University Avenue. And are you just waiting to get the street paved?
the contractor was delayed because of, and remains delayed because the telecommunications companies have not moved their lines onto the new utility poles that are, that were installed by the power company. This is a very common issue that we are running into across the city that is delaying several things. And so that project essentially has been put on hold because we can't remove the old utility poles which are in the way of us widening the road, which we have to do to put the sidewalk in.
I noticed that this summer, all the traffic was rerouted around Warrington Hill. Mm-hmm. There's tremendous potholes.
There are.
Yeah, it needs to be on the paving project or schedule.
Would you like to start us off with your commissioner comments just now?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the neighborhood pleased with the upgrade around Eureka Cafe, the Bill Park Park. Really, the new sidewalk. We've always been concerned that somebody's going to step off down, a foot and a half onto the street. That worked out perfectly, getting that sidewalk to street level. And I think the only thing that's left are the railings on the front steps. I know you did some pointing, or the contractor did some pointing on the steps to take care of that. But overall, the neighborhood's really pleased with how that turned out. I think they did a really super job with even the traffic posts in front of the steps, because you've got two different, recreational areas, and kids are always going back and forth there. So I think that really brought the traffic that's going through there and awareness. Watch out for kids that are going back and forth, back and forth.
Glad to hear it.
So, but it's just the hand railings, I think. I think that concrete is cured in mouth.
Yeah, we're on punch list with that, so hopefully in the next week or so.
The other thing, this is not my ward, but there's this roundabout that's out on, Collins Ferry, and what's the status of that now?
Let's see, they will be in about a month, 6 weeks, shutting the street down completely. They hope to get that finished by the end of the year. It is going to cause major tie-ups over there for sure. But personally, I live about 200 yards away from there. I think it's going to be a good asset for the community, because that particular intersection is not that functional. Although, I think one of the reasons, I shouldn't be talking during the comments, but one of the reasons for that was a consideration for the middle school at the time, but the middle school is now moving, so big question now how that's going to, the new property is going to coordinate with the new roundabout.
You think it'll be done by the fall?
Not by the
I've been
fall,
told December 2026 is when that's finished.
but a whole year?
Wow.
Yeehaw.
Looks like they're moving pretty quick on it to me. I mean, they got the water down already.
As a personal fan of Black Bear and being on the other side, I'm a little upset, but.
We'll see. They've been doing a really good job at minimizing traffic impacts in that project, right? And they're doing everything they can to phase as much work as they can outside of shutting down, the roadways. So I appreciate the DOH for taking at least that in mind. Other comments? All right. Let's go in reverse tonight, I suppose. Mr. Walmsley?
Well, thanks to Drew, I see your progress all over the place. Are you wearing a big straw hat these days when you're out on job sites?
I am.
You are, yes, that's good.
My
Keep
straw
the sun
hat.
off.
Yeah.
Don't get skin cancer. But yeah, so it's good to see everything, progressing with the sidewalks and curb cuts. There's some curb cuts going on down in Beechhurst too. Is that, I look like an outside contractor, and it's like right opposite where the print shop used to be, opposite our parking lot, and on down further by the tattoo parlor. It looks like they're doing a couple of new road cuts. Are you gonna redo that sidewalk on that side then? Is that part of redoing that part of Beechhurst or?
So Mr. Walmsley is referring to the Department of Highways' recent curb ramp upgrade project. It's one of their last across the entire state. This was a part of a initiative the Department of Highways began several years ago, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, to upgrade every single curb ramp in the entire state. And they've done it through projects of several hundred ramps per in each urban area where they exist. And this is, again, one of the last of those large projects. This is 180-ish locations across the city where they are going to be replacing curb ramps, some of which they have built and ripped out and built, ripped out and built, ripped out 3 or 4 times. Trying to
I was
get
gonna say,
right.
it looks like one of them was already there and then they jackhammered it out. And they're
It's,
putting it in again.
we have to, hats off to the DOH for, for taking another shot at some of these that are difficult. It's certainly difficult to build in Morgantown compliant, accessible ramps. But yes, that is not my project,
Yeah.
fortunately.
But the stuff I'm seeing you do is good. It's good to see that, see that on the balance.
Sure. Mr. Cross?
Let's see, nothing from the PED board tonight. We will be meeting at the end of this month. Do want to thank Bill Quick, been a great public servant for a lot of years, particularly with Traffic Commission, been in a lot of meetings with Bill. He attended the PED board as well. And the Mon Valley Green Space Coalition, by the way, our green belt that we talked about, certainly going to come into play with multimodal transportation. So that might be something to talk about in the future. As for the mission of the Traffic Commission, as we talked about, it certainly seems to be shifting at this point. One thing I will point out, glad that Charlie is here, one of the benefits of offering your volunteer services to boards and commissions is you can get a direct ear to the city administration. I remember years ago, Charlie, was it years ago? Maybe not that long, but Charlie did talk about that problem up at the community center at the old school. And lo and behold, here we got, a direct result from it. So that's great. Thank you, Charlie, for attending and bringing that up. So that helps. We had a person who was representing First Ward on the Pedestrian Safety Board at the time, and she highlighted the need for Wagner-Dorsey improvement. And at that meeting, Drew was there, he attends, and so that got onto the Rapid Response Project, and that's a good job done now with the bump outs, and it offers a good, safe pedestrian crossing at Wagner-Dorsey. So that is one benefit of the boards and commissions in town, maybe not from a public standpoint, but certainly from an internal standpoint. If somebody wants to volunteer, you can get more access, more information, and possibly get things moving quicker to your specific interest and the interest of the community in general. That's all I've got.
Okay, I'm sorry. So I don't have any direct new comments. I'm still following up on my FOIA request. I have not made communication with MUB regarding their methods of communication. And I have not heard back about the strategic plan. I've been putting lots of emails out there, and I just need to follow up on all of that. I did use the 311 app for a particular parking issue down on Peninsula Boulevard, and due to the weather, of course, Marla Park has been closed, so I've not seen any increased traffic. However, I will definitely get on Rachel's list for prioritization, because I do think that traffic will increase due to the new splash area pool up there. I did want to ask a question regarding communication. We're identifying that we're down a few commissioners, and how do we get ideas to other members of the community. I wondered, do we or could we have a social media page? Again, that's time and dedication of someone to check it or something. Are there guidelines about that, Drew?
I believe there are guidelines.
Okay.
I believe they all, at least for commissions, must go through the city's communications department. I know that the Pedestrian Safety Board and the Bike Board have operated many social media pages on their own without direct coordination in the past.
Okay.
So,
That might be another little project for me to follow up on then. Okay. But that is everything that I have for the 6th Ward.
For the second word, I've had complaints about the intersection of Spruce and the South Park Bridge, the Pleasant Street Bridge, the potholes there. Although it does have a calming effect on traffic, it's been there for a long time. And if we have any way of addressing it, it would be nice to have that taken care of. And the only other thing I'd want to say is I thank you for your enthusiasm, and I'm happy to have been here for a period of time. So continue on, and I realize it's not easy, but I do appreciate your attempts to make Morgantown a better place to live.
Bill, I feel like we should have let you go last, Bill. I don't have anything from my neighborhood, but I did want to follow the gentleman across the way from me and give kudos to Drew. Today, I walked using the Dorsey to Wagner and crossed there, but I also passed several people who were biking up that lane, and it is just so much safer as somebody who uses that walkway, that path from the First Ward to downtown several times a week. I do feel just much safer as a pedestrian and a cyclist when I'm using that. So thank you for the city and for Drew for leading that project and getting that implemented. That's great for us.
Well, fantastic. Any other discussion for this
I'll
evening?
move to adjourn.
Okay,
A second?
all righty. Well, thank you all.
Good. Adjourned at